Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're going to be taking a look at something really interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool one.
That's a cool one. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the Seiko Lord Matic.
Yes, the Lord Matic.
And I've been looking forward to this one for a little while.
Me too. This is
No.
a fun watch to talk about.
Yeah, it's a watch I'm not super familiar with. I mean, I know of them obviously,
Yeah.
but I'm not super familiar with them. So it'll be cool to kind of learn more about it with you today and for everybody listening.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of interesting stuff with these watches.
Yeah, well, let's just jump right into it, I guess. Um, so yeah, the Seiko Lord Matic, and we've got some cool sources that I think we can pull from for this one,
You
right?
do, we do.
Yeah, so yeah, it'll be interesting, I think, to see what we can find out about this watch, and maybe if we're lucky, we'll learn some stuff about how to keep them running and how to take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're fantastic watches. And there's a lot of, I think, interesting technical details and, maybe some historical stuff we can look at as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, imagine you've inherited your grandfather's Lord Matic. What do you need to know about this watch?
Ooh, yeah.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so the Lord Matic, right? Seiko in the late 60s, early 70s, this was a big push for them to really become like a real player in the watch world. And so the Lord Matic was part of this
Okay.
this whole kind of scheme to make these really high quality watches that were really well engineered.
So they were kind of, I mean, it sounds like they were already a player at that point, but it was like
Right.
they were trying to take it up a notch. Or...
Yeah. They were known for making good watches.
Yeah.
But they wanted to kind of move into that like higher end market a little bit.
Oh,
And
sure.
so the Lord Matic shows up in this kind of environment, right?
Yeah.
And it uses a movement that was based on the King Seiko 56 caliber, which is really interesting because the 56 caliber is like this super thin automatic movement,
Oh, yeah.
which at the time was like thinner than anything else out there. It was like a really big deal.
Wow, thinner than any other automatic movement. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was a huge deal.
Especially for, the time period. Like that's got to be pretty early in the days of really, thin automatic movements.
Yeah, and it was such a big deal for Seiko because they're known for making really good movements, obviously.
Right.
And so to be able to make one that was like technically impressive and also like, aesthetically pleasing,
Right.
it really made a statement for them.
I wonder, was that just because of the technology of the time, or like, what do you think was kind of driving that desire to make thinner movements, like other than just obviously showing off their technical prowess? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's an element of that, right?
Yeah.
Like they wanted to show that they could do it. But also, thinner watches are just generally more comfortable to wear.
Okay.
So there's like a practical element to it as well.
Okay.
If you think about like the way watches were worn back then, they were often worn with suits, kind of like dress watches. And so
Yeah.
having a thinner watch is just going to be more comfortable under a cuff.
Makes sense.
So I think there's kind of like this confluence of factors, the technological advancements allowed them to make a thinner movement. And then stylistically, it just made sense as well.
Okay.
So they kind of all came together at the right time.
Yeah, it seems like there was a real kind of push towards like sleek design and thinness in just technology in general at that time. So like
Right.
I could definitely see how a watch would fit into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Lord Matic was considered quite large for its time, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like at least like 35 millimeters wide, 42 long, and 10 thick.
Oh, wow.
So it was a statement piece,
It was like the power suit of watches or something like that.
Exactly.
Wow. So what were some of the different models of the Lord Matic that were made?
So they had, some models with just time and date, some with day date.
Okay.
They even had a deluxe version which had like a higher beat rate, so it was more accurate.
Okay. So for people who might not be familiar with that, what does beat rate mean? Like, what is that referring to?
So the beat rate is basically how many times per second the balance wheel oscillates back and forth.
Oh, okay.
And so the higher the beat rate, the more accurate the watch can be.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the deluxe version of the Lord Matic had a faster beat rate, which made it kind of like the top of the line model.
Yeah. Okay.
So they had kind of a good range of different models to appeal to different people.
So they were really kind of hitting all the marks there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were really trying to make a splash with this watch. Okay, so we talked about the movement. We talked about some of the different variations of it.
Yeah.
What about the design? Like, how did the design of the Lord Matic kind of change over the years that it was in production?
Well, early on, they had a one-piece case design.
Okay.
So that means that the movement could only be accessed from the front,
Oh, wow.
And this was done to improve water resistance.
Oh,
So it's kind of like a, sealing it up tight.
makes sense, huh?
Yeah. But later on, they switched to a design where you could access the movement from the back,
Okay.
which made maintenance a bit easier.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
But yeah, those early models are kind of cool because they're a little bit more unique.
I bet, yeah.
And speaking of unique, we were talking about the thinness of the movement.
Right.
Well, over the years that the Lord Matic was in production, they actually managed to shave like almost a full millimeter off the thickness of the movement,
Wow.
which is pretty impressive,
So it was like a razor-thin movement to begin with, and then they just kept going.
Yeah, they just kept pushing it.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, how did they even do that? Like, how do you make something that thin already and then find a way to make it even thinner without... I mean, I would imagine there's got to be some trade-offs there somewhere, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. And it kind of leads us to one of the more interesting aspects of the Lord Matic.
oh, okay.
Um, so most of the Lord Matics, except for the 5601 caliber, they have this little plastic part
Okay.
in the quick-set date
Well, so
mechanism.
when you change the date quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's this little plastic part that's actually pretty prone to breakage
Oh,
if you're not careful.
plastic in a watch known for its precision engineering. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising, but back then it wasn't uncommon to use some plastic components in watches.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing,
Okay.
but it just means you have to be a little bit careful with it.
Okay, well, let's hold that thought. And we'll come back to that in the next part because I think that's a very important thing for people to know about. So,
Yes, absolutely. A very important tip.
so we'll be back in just a minute after a quick break. All right, so we're back, and we were just talking about how the Lord Matic has a plastic part in the date-changing mechanism.
Right, right. And it can be a little tricky.
Okay, so what do we need to know to avoid breaking this thing?
So there's a really simple trick to it.
Okay.
You want to adjust the day and date around 6:15 p.m.
6:15 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems oddly specific. Why 6:15?
So basically what happens is the date changing mechanism, it starts to engage around that time. Like it starts getting ready to change over to the next day.
Okay.
And so if you try to force the date to change while it's still like partially engaged,
Oh, okay.
you can put stress on that plastic part and break it.
Gotcha. So it's like shifting gears in a car when it's still in motion. Like
Exactly.
you need to kind of wait till the right moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a smooth transition.
Okay.
And another thing to keep in mind is that the day quick set is going to feel smooth,
Okay.
but the date quick set is going to have a little bit more resistance.
Oh,
And that's normal. It's just the mechanics of it.
gotcha.
But it's a good reminder to be gentle.
Okay. Yeah, I've definitely heard some stories of people, breaking that part.
Yeah, it's a common problem.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
good to know the proper way to do it.
For sure.
Wow. That's fascinating. We talked about Seiko bringing back some vintage movements in modern watches.
Right.
Do you think they ever considered reviving the 56 caliber?
Oh, man, I wish they would.
Yeah.
When they reintroduced the Fours movement family, which was actually inspired by like a similar caliber to the 56,
Okay.
I was really hoping that they would bring back the 56 as well.
Oh, man, that would have been cool.
It would have been awesome.
Yeah, imagine like a modern Lord Matic with a 56 caliber.
Oh, yeah.
That would be incredible.
Like a reissue?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that would be a dream.
That'd be a hot seller, I bet.
Yeah, for sure.
But they never did it.
No, they didn't. And it's kind of a bummer, you know?
Yeah. Like, any theories on why they didn't do it? Like, was it just too complex to recreate with today's technology, or?
I mean, I think it's probably a combination of factors. Cost is always a consideration, and the 56 caliber was a very intricate movement with a lot of parts.
Okay.
So recreating it to modern standards might have been prohibitively expensive.
Okay.
Plus, the market for dress watches, which is where the 56 caliber really shines, is a little bit smaller compared to sportier watches.
Okay.
So it might have just not been the right strategic move for them at the time.
Yeah. But still a missed opportunity, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, maybe one day they'll surprise us, right?
You never know.
You never know.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But even without a modern revival, I mean, the Lord Matic is still such an important part of Seiko's history. Just a testament to their watchmaking prowess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So for anyone listening who might stumble across a Lord Matic, maybe they find one at an antique shop, or maybe it's a family heirloom.
Mm-hmm.
What are some key takeaways that you want them to remember?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What should they be looking for, and what should they know to really appreciate the significance of this watch?
Well, first of all, just look at the quality of the watch.
Mm.
The Lord Matic, even though it's a vintage piece, it has this like enduring appeal. The design is classic and elegant, and the movement, as we talked about, it's just a marvel of engineering.
Yeah.
And even today, these watches can be remarkably accurate and reliable.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that something made that long ago can still hold up against modern timepieces.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the quality that Seiko built into those watches.
Yeah.
But as far as like specific things to look for, check the dial for the Lord Matic signature.
Okay.
And remember how we talked about the different case designs?
Right.
That's another way to kind of date your Lord Matic. The earlier models with the one-piece case are going to have that distinctive look.
Yeah, it's like a little treasure hunt.
Mhm.
Like piecing together the history of the watch based on its features.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And of course, don't forget those maintenance tips we talked about.
Yeah, the 6.15 rule.
Yeah, if you do end up with a Lord Matic, just remember to treat that date-changing mechanism with care.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of care can go a long way.
Absolutely.
So I think this has been a really fascinating deep dive. I mean, I've learned a lot. I don't know about you, but
Me too. I always learn something new when we do these.
yeah, it's cool. I really like these kind of like deep dives into specific watches.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up today, I want to leave everybody with a final thought.
Okay.
Imagine you're tasked with reviving the Lord Matic for today's market. What elements of its design and movement would you prioritize? And how would you balance those vintage elements with modern technology?
That's a great question. Would you bring back the 56 caliber or would you go a different route? What do you think?
I think that's a really interesting challenge. You know, would you stick with the classic design or give it a modern twist?
Yeah.
Would you embrace the limitations of the original movement or would you enhance it with, modern materials and techniques?
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about.
It really is and kind of speaks to the enduring appeal of this watch.